Excellent. There we go. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I just had a session with this young man where I was doing my soul guidance, and I should have recorded it. What am I thinking?
Live and learn. Live and learn. Well, and that's I can't tell you how much that's sort of the sort of insight you have to get used to
Like,
in business, because it happens all the time. You're like, oh, that would have been useful. Okay, do it from now on. So,
and it was a really good session for him and for me because I'm learning a lot.
Yeah,
that was a prototyping or a practice, let's say, for me, and it was really good. So,
yay! Excellent. Well done. Good job.
thank you.
So now you know. I can't tell you. You do a workshop and you're like, different colored markers would have been good, or a sign-in sheet so I could have gotten emails would have been good.
Taking some pictures, which I didn't do.
Some pictures, yeah.
At the first constellation.
So yeah, it's get used to that feeling. It's because it's and it's nice when we can get used to it as something to welcome, like, oh, I'm getting feedback. It's not an accusation about not having done what I couldn't realize I needed to do back then. It's just feedback, and now I know. Once you get used to that, it actually it feels good. We get full points for not being completely prophetic, for being limited human beings.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, I want to start with the same thing I said last time. You are rocking it.
Thank you.
You are totally rocking this building a business thing. You're just taking steps and you're moving forward and you're doing it.
It feels like a little bit at a time, but at least it's moving.
And that's the only way to do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do you eat an elephant? Is that the cliche?
I don't know, but I get it.
Not all at once. And that was something I had to when I was doing my website redesign. I was getting so frustrated with myself about procrastinating.
Yeah.
And then I shifted gears and I said, if you do a little bit a day, I promise to applaud you for it.
I need
So sometimes, there are times to do big pushes and get big, I'm in one of those right now. I'm getting a lot done. I'm in flow. I'm accomplishing a lot, but it's not the way it always is.
Right.
And sometimes you gotta, like, you have an event coming up and you've got to market. Okay, well, good. Congratulations. I just think it's marvelous. Everything I see, the questions you're asking, if you remember a few months ago, you were kind of like, I can't find a space. I'm not going to find a space. Spaces are such a, and you just kept at it. Mm-hmm. And you're finding spaces.
Well, and I got a couple more to check out. So
yeah,
I hope to do that too.
Yeah, I mean, you live in Boulder. It's a big enough city that there's got to be a bunch of options out there. It's just the shoe leather of going looking for them. Yeah. So I see your desired issues and questions and themes. Where would you like to start?
There was one thing that I was just thinking of for some reason as you were talking. I think it's around the theme of not beating ourselves up for things we didn't think about or do. Yeah. And it isn't quite that, but I didn't put it in here. But I think it's really important is to get your ideas on de-rolling or giving up the role that you were playing in the constellation.
Okay.
And in these kind of collective conversations, or however you want to name that, some people are calling them that, that's Diana Claire Douglas's name. And
Yeah.
the energies are big and can be strong.
Yeah.
And I found this last time, I didn't know about it right away, but one woman, and she wasn't even, I didn't think holding anything that strong, but a friend of mine told me she put herself in as the ancestors for both the white man and the indigenous.
Ooh, probably too much in one role. Yeah.
Yeah. So she didn't feel well for the
Yeah, I
next
would think.
week or so.
She's kind of embodying the conflict, huh?
So anyway, I did have them de-roll and kind of shake off
Yeah.
and say, my name is, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's more. And one guy, he hasn't really told me. I think he doesn't want to really talk about it too much, but he said to me about the next one, which I'm offering, in another week or so. He says, Judy, I'll get back to you. I'm not sure I'm quite ready yet. And that makes me think there was something. Anyway, so what are your thoughts on that kind of de-rolling?
I just want to respond to that guy first.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who can't do a lot of constellations. There are people who like to do them every week. The junkies, they're into it. And there are other people who like 1/4 is about their quota. So it may mean something more. It may just be about him. Mm-hmm. There are people who just, it's just rich and intense, and they're just not going to do it very often.
Okay.
So I just want to, because I've seen that. I have people who visit my constellations about once a year. Oh, it's time to go to the constellations. I haven't done that in a long time. And I trust that they're working that out for themselves. I have strong opinions about de-rolling. So warning, strong opinions on the way. There are a lot of tips and tools you can use, but I'm going to address them second. Mm-hmm. First, I think stance, Stan, it counts for a great deal.
What is it? Stance?
Stance, and I'll define that. There are constellators who they're convinced that de-rolling is hard. And so you have to bring a lot of work and intentionality to it. And I think when you assume that, that's what happens in your group.
Yeah, and I wasn't assuming.
Yeah. That. And there are other facilitators who assume you can go in and out of roles, and it's most of the time not a big deal, even if it's something intense. Because how many non-intense roles are there? If they're not intense, there's not much point to bringing it in. If someone comes in and they're like, I'm fine, you're like, you're probably not relevant to the constellation. So just kind of holding inside yourself that shifting roles is something that people can do easily, and it's not really a big deal, is really the first step. And if you're convinced, and I'm not saying you are, but if someone is convinced that de-rolling is hard, then that's going to be the experience of the group. That's just something I've noticed. There's certain unconscious stance things. I'm working with someone right now who really thinks creating a very safe space, because people are very fragile, is really important. And you know me, I think safe space is very important. But I think she attracts a lot of fragile people or fragile behavior because she's presupposing a lot of fragility. Just a slightly different version of this. And I'm presupposing people are kind of resilient. And yes, create safe space. Don't create crazy, chaotic, poor boundaried space. But so anyway, so that's number one. Number two, I very much, I like having like kind of opening and closing rituals as part of space. I'm sure you do. I don't do drumming. I don't do smudging. I don't do a lot of ritual, but small, like, and they're not even necessarily labeled as ritual, but they might even be just called routine in a sense. But they function as ritual in the group. And I do the one I think you're referencing, which is, so we're in a circle, the client just looks at each one, and the person says to the client, my name is Joe. I represented your mom. And the client says, thank you. And if they didn't represent anyone, they say, my name is Susan. I was a witness. And the person says, thank you. And we just go around. And I think that helps. And we just do it every time, and people look forward to it, and it feels good. And then, and I like the language of I represented your mother rather than I was or I played, which new people can fall into a little bit. And also, if there's any of this little stuff like afterwards or even during that final circle where, you know, there's some, it doesn't happen very often, but these little interactions where you say, let's say someone represented Poland, let's just say that. And someone goes up to them and says, hey, Poland, you were amazing. And I say, he's not Poland anymore. He's Joe. So I just try, and that's kind of a hygiene. I just try and notice any of those kind of slippages, because that means someone's still playing with the identifications. On extremely rare occasions, after a constellation, someone will come up to me, or I've identified, but I almost never do. I just kind of trust people are taking care of themselves. That's another one of my presuppositions, is that people can take care of themselves. But every once in a while, I watch someone really go into a role, and I'm like, their bell's getting rung. Or they come up to me afterwards and says, I'm still in it. And so what I do is I invite someone else, just come on over, help me out for a minute here. Because at that point, it's during a break or it's afterwards. So people are milling or going to the bathroom or something like that. Mm-hmm. Just come on over. Would you do something for me? And they're, sure, of course. I will often take a very experienced representative, just because it's useful to have someone who's used to going in and out of roles for this. And I'll just put my hand on their shoulder, and whatever that person's role was that they're finding sticky, let's just say it's the client's father. I'll just put my hand on this temporary volunteer and say, you're the father. And then I have the person who's feeling sticky bow to the representation of that which they had been sticky with. Mm-hmm. That usually takes care of it. It's kind of back in the day when I was doing NLP, there's usually a subset of students who would get so into the client's thing that they couldn't tell the difference between themselves and the client. Wow. Not quite that extreme, but if the person was feeling a lot of sadness, they would be in there and get really resourceless, because now they're too in the client's thing with them. And the internal movement is me, you, me, you, you. It's just kind of naming it. So that bow to me seems to do that. Oh, I'm me and you're you. And then I turn to the temporary volunteer. I say, thank you very much. Step out of the role, go off to go to the bathroom. And the client is usually all better then. Having said that, the next thing I say to them, and this is the final presupposition, is if anything else sticks around, we're going to presuppose that's your stuff. And it's something, it's coming up for you to work on. Okay? And at that point they go, oh my God, that's so what's happening. And they acknowledge that. They just needed someone to kind of, help them see it. The constellation is in service to you right now and bringing up something apparently that it's useful for you to notice. And you can handle noticing it. I have never had a situation with someone who, after those few steps, was still, I presuppose people's resilience and capacities and ability to step in and out of roles. So I don't tend to attract a whole lot of the, I'm going crazy now because I stepped into the incestuous father kind of thing. And I sometimes talk with clients, colleagues who do have a lot of that. I'm like, what's going on that you're having so much of that going on at your events? There are facilitators who seem to attract a lot more drama than others do. And I kind of presuppose that's part of the stance, the internal stance, and what they feel like they need and want to work with.
Well, and that could very well be the case for this woman that wasn't feeling well. She's African American.
Which means she's European and African.
Yeah, she's actually, because we went around the circle and I had them share at least what they know about their ancestral history. And she said African, Native American, and German.
Yeah, that's right there. So yeah, she was playing with her ancestors. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's probably some of her own work to do.
Exactly. So, just finding a really gentle way of sort of saying, if there's anything left over, bow to all that stuff. And then what's still there is probably something that's useful for you to wrestle with a little bit. Mm-hmm. What's his face? God, I always forget his name. I have such a terrible time. He's a Serbian. He comes to the West Coast all the time.
Yeah, I don't remember it either.
I keep on having trouble, but I went to his workshop, and he doesn't do the de-rolling. Mm-hmm. And he's very intentional about it. I disagree with him a little bit on the extremity of his position, but generally I appreciate what he's saying, which is that when you step into a role, you're getting your own constellation too. And de-rolling means that we're shutting off the process for the representative. Mm-hmm. And so he doesn't approve of it. I think that's a little bit further, too much on a spectrum, but I do take his point, and I think it's a good one. Mm-hmm. That we're all having our own constellations. And that's worth, one of the things in my opening ritual is I always say, if there's something you've brought into, there's something, trouble in your heart, something going on in your life, and something in the constellation today mirrors that, it's the insight you needed, oh my God, that mother is just like my mother, or whatever, we don't consider this a coincidence. Mm-hmm. And then I make a joke because everybody who comes pays $5, other than the clients who pay more. And I say, I promise everybody at least $5 worth of healing today. And they all laugh. So they're already understanding that they're going to be engaging their own process too. And so it's not so surprising if afterwards they're still like going, whoa, that was kind of big for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, one of my assumptions has been that others can hold a space like I do, or step in and out like I do, or not be overwhelmed by it.
Right.
And I'm seeing that may not always be true. So.
Yeah, for newer people, you do want to, as the doctors call it, titrate, right?
Yeah, what is that? I've heard that term. What does that mean?
Increase by amounts and decrease by amounts.
Okay.
It's often used about titrating off a medication rather than immediately stopping. Yeah. But you can also titrate up. So just let the system. And then there are people who they dive in and they're naturals and they're just swimming in it and they're like, oh my God, this is the best thing. And that's, you know those people too.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Does that feel like that helps?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Where do I want to start? Yeah, I just met with the soul guidance guy. Maybe what I would start there while it's fresh. Well, this what I wrote in here was what the woman said on Tuesday. And that took me into the circle conversations thing. But I think one of the things that comes to mind for both of them is They're younger people. They're right around 30. It's a point in life when this is all coming up to get looked at. Who am I? What is my role in life? My purpose, my soul purpose. So it's very rich territory. And I really enjoyed the time with both of them, and they know me. So there's a level of trust that's already established, or has been at some point. And the other challenge is, and maybe this is just the way it is, I see that as a potential market, and yet somebody in that position is probably not able to pay, or not able to pay much.
Right.
So maybe it's just a way for me to begin to get experience with where it feels less threatening to me.
Right.
And could there be opportunities in the future for people who are at a kind of a crossroads,
right,
in their processing?
So here's a possible model for working with this, which is very common and might work well. Free or very low cost groups. So you like doing groups, you enjoy groups. You can function as a funnel, right? Mm-hmm. It's a way to attract people in. Mm-hmm. Then for those people who want to do more, but they don't have a lot of money, right? Mm-hmm. You do some kind of program. A 6-week program, right? Because then you don't have to charge them as much, in a sense, mm-hmm. right? An individual session might have to be, well, I'll just say that, or a 3-week program, or that kind of thing. A more intensive day-long workshop, weekend workshop. And then not all these people are not going to have don't presuppose that none of these people are going to have money. Mm-hmm. Or it may be just the way they want to spend their money. They've got a little discretionary cash and they really feel like they need this. Other people put it into skiing, but they feel like they need to do this. And those are the people you do individual sessions with. And so that's kind of a classic kind of a funnel, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Well, and what I noticed with both of them was, neither one of them have much money. They don't work right now. The young woman is getting therapy, she told me. Well, I'm sure her parents are paying for that. She's living with them.
Well, then her parents could pay for you.
That's what I'm thinking. And the same thing with the guy. Yeah. This morning he had, I don't know what this is, but it's some kind of body work or working with the body, a Rosen session.
Right.
I've never heard of that, or I'm not familiar.
I get it in my 20s, yeah.
Anyway, it was very meaningful for him, and it actually his description of that made the launching point for what we talked about. But I'm wondering who's paying for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So please don't presuppose that these people won't pay for it.
Okay.
Yeah. They're going out and have beers with their buddies on Friday nights. We're all making choices about how to spend our money. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it sounds like, and this could be good too, that inviting them to a constellation evening could help open that up more.
You bet. So if you choose again, that's a medium price thing to come to. And then the other thing in response to the other question about kind of prototyping, and your sense of integrity about charging, mm-hmm. is there's a lot of different ways to approach this. One way to approach it is doing what you're doing, which is doing it for free and then at some point charging a bit, and then a bit more, and then a bit more, right, at certain intervals. That even becomes potentially a way to market in a totally in alignment kind of way, to say, you know, I'm just starting this out, and through the end of 2016, it's going to be free. After that, it's going to start costing something. So I invite you to sign up. Or, you know, it's going to be $50 an hour through Easter, but after that, it's going to go up. That's how I got my constellation group started. Mm-hmm. The first person who signed up to have a constellation done, I only charged $50. And then the next ones were 75, and then after that 100, until I got to my, at the time, goal level, which I think was 150 for a constellation. So I did that over the course of, and back then I was only having one gathering a month, so that took me about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months to get to my goal level. And that felt like both respectful of my learning process, a really good deal for them, and wasn't pushing my ecology around pricing too hard. Mm-hmm. Like, my body was going to go along with charging that much. If I tried to charge $300, I'd think my system would have revolted.
Yeah.
So the thing I want you to be able to, regardless of what you choose, and I tend to be on the side of charging something. Why? Because you are doing something of value for people, and you know, you can guarantee that. I can guarantee it, that an hour conversation with you is going to be of some use to me. Because of, not only because you're a good and wonderful and wise person, but all the skill sets and the training and the learning you have available. And regardless of what you decide to do, I invite you to find a place inside yourself where you can acknowledge this and own this. Instead of being on the side of kind of apologizing for the fact that it's new and isn't really not ready for prime time yet, and I wouldn't want to charge for that because, yeah. I mean, you know, I was a brand new constellation facilitator, but I trusted that if I charged someone $50, they were gonna get something good out of it. It might have been a little ham-handed and a little inelegant because I was new, but I knew they were gonna get something, that I wasn't gonna be out of integrity with the value they got in me charging $50. So, is that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay.
It helps me think about, you know, beyond these two people, I can see on the horizon a couple more, and so maybe I approach that a little differently.
Yeah. And again, just to be super transparent about it, and to really sit down and kind of think it through. Like I would invite you. Let's just say for now you're like, I'm good with not charging. Let's just say that, to actually decide how long. Mm-hmm. Like, is it through the end of the year? Is it in, you know, instead of having an uncertain date for that, and what might be the next level? And here's the deal, you can change your mind.
Yeah.
There's no problem around that. But if you actually create a few milestones for yourself around this, mm-hmm. then at least you're not just letting it go. There's something out there poking you and saying, you said you were going to start charging $50. That was your decision. What's up with that? Mm-hmm. And you could say, I'm not ready yet. Okay, great. You know, and then you change your milestone, or you move it up. I mean, here's the key. I think that what we should charge should feel a little uncomfortable for folks like us, but not so uncomfortable that we freak ourselves out. Either because it feels unethical or because it just feels too big. You know? But if we get too comfortable with what we're charging, then it's probably time to make ourselves a teeny bit uncomfortable. Not much, just a tiny, tiny bit. And on the other side, you're not there yet, although you may be there. I don't know, maybe you are there, where you start noticing you're cranky about it being too small. And then instead of, some people, when they do that, they blame the client. And I'm like, no, it's time to raise your prices, right? I really noticed, the first time I really noticed this for myself was when I graduated from NLP certification and I was TAing for the school. I was giving a special deal to students that I was TAing. And it was a range of some sort. I don't usually do sliding scale, but I was doing sliding scale for them as an exception. And over and over and over, these guys would pay me the least amount. And I started getting cranky about it. And I went, Leslie, if you're cranky, then your sliding scale is going too low. And so your emotions are a useful barometer of what's a good price. So if any part of you felt cranky about doing such beautiful work today and not getting paid for it, we're not going to blame him. We're going to consider maybe it's time to move towards not, giving it away for free.
Yeah, and setting a limit on that is what.
Yeah, and deciding. And if you want to get a bunch of practice in with these people and you say, after the new year, I'm going to start charging, but I'd like to get a lot of practice in, you might get a lot of good practice opportunities. Which is not a bad thing, because number one, they could become clients in the future. And number two, they become really good referral sources.
And I'm thinking testimonial too.
Testimonials. Yeah, you bet. But obviously, again, as your coach, I strongly recommend you charge sooner rather than later, even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
And even that, the sort of, $50 until Easter or whatever feels right. $75 until Mother's Day or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's good.
And you might, like write out that, in fact, this feels like an action item, just a plan on pricing these sessions, the soul guidance sessions. What is a for now goal? Are they 60-minute sessions?
Yeah.
Yeah. So at this stage in your life and whatnot, once you raise it up to the level you kind of want it to be at, what might that be? That's something worth thinking about. My personal opinion is $100 is the minimum for something like this.
But the plan for me would also be how I'm working up to that.
Exactly. And again, and the other thing to include in this, because this is the kind of, I think, ethics you have about this stuff. How do you want to deal with discounts? How do you want to deal? Do you like sliding scale? Do you like barter? Just to think through. None of these are right or wrong, but just to make really clear choices and then be really super transparent with your clients about that.
I already know I don't like barter.
Yeah, I do it once in a while still. Right now I have, it's actually working really, really well. I have 2 guys being registrar and web designer for the intensive, and they'll get to come to the intensive for free for that. It's a really good arrangement. But yes, I agree. Unique, specific, with people you really know and trust, et cetera, et cetera. And I like that you feel that way in the beginning, because often people as beginners do a lot of bartering because they feel kind of like they have to. And it tends to not work super well, is my experience.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to compare apples and oranges on services, and then you realize you don't like their massages. And
Yeah, that happened to me.
oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's such a problem. I remember, I don't think I'm going to be able to go anymore because there's this wonderful networking event where everyone brings a gift. And then we have a lottery and people get to choose. And then the last 3 or 4 people, no one wants their thing. And I was like 24 out of 25 people in the room. So I had the bottom of the barrel. And so I had to choose between the last 2 brand new life coaches in the room or something like that. And I went home and I thought, I'm not going to waste an hour of my time with bad coaching. Free gift is not, it's not a gift. It doesn't. So I never followed through. That was terrible. Oh. Anyway, so okay. So do you feel like and then you wanted to get a little bit more or have a little bit more discussion about the content of these soul guidance sessions, or what exactly were you wanting some input or coaching around that? Or is it that's just something you feel like you're on track to figuring out for yourself?
I think I'm pretty good with that.
Okay.
It was just that something came up in the one on Tuesday about other things I could offer, and I can really explore that more. It's something I'm good at, having circles, and I'm already getting some ideas about that. The people, because people are wanting to talk about these things that are going on after the election, and they're troubled and all that stuff. So who is it and where and when? Is it local? Is it, I need to work with all of that. I think I know a guy locally who might even do some of that with me. It's just, a question of, can we charge? And I need to talk.
Free will offering is always a good option for those kinds of things.
What is it?
Free will offering.
Oh,
pass the hat.
Right.
Or if you're having to pay for rent, then you have to at least, I have to ask for $10 per person, otherwise I can't cover the rent, kind of thing. But that's the kind of thing that if you're not going to, if those are harder to charge for, and so you want to try and find a place that you like, somebody's living room or something that you're not going to have to pay money on rent, and then you can just pass the hat. Say, listen, I had to do marketing. I'm bringing my skills to helping the group come together and talk in a safe space, et cetera, et cetera. And again, that becomes a completely appropriate funnel situation at the beginning or the end to say, I'm whatever you call yourself. I'm a life coach and whatever language you come up with. And I offer those services. And if you want to know more, let me know. Here's a sign-in sheet for my email list. Again, really low key. The other thing with that is if you go in that direction, that's a really good match for Meetup.
I think I've told you I don't really like Meetup, but
well, the downside of Meetup is that it does cost money. It's not as inexpensive as it used to be. The upside is it's a marketing. It's people out there looking for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And to my mind, these kinds of, social issue conversations you want to host seems like a really good match for the ethos of Meetup, the original ethos of Meetup, which is people who have, gay men who like Yorkshire Terriers and eat cheese fondue, right? People who have an affiliation to find each other. In a world, Robert Putnam, Bowling Alone, in a world where people are so isolated and have a hard way of finding each other, it's a pretty good platform for helping people find each other. In that sense, not in the dating sense.
Yeah.
Although, if someone, found their true love at one of your events, that wouldn't be a bad thing.
Well, and they do, I mean, it is an opportunity for them to meet people that they haven't met before.
And that was the original vision for Meetup.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
It is, it's like I said, it's more expensive than it used to be. It's like $75 a year or twice a year. I can't remember now.
Okay.
But I have to tell you, my first 4 years of my business was essentially based on Meetup. Because it's there are millions of people on Meetup, and so you don't need to find them individually on your own, passing out flyers. I mean, I recommend that as well. But it's just really efficient marketing.
Yeah, so far I've wanted to do word of mouth or, people I know and then people they know, just to kind of be a little more careful about what's coming in until I feel a little more able to handle various levels of consciousness, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, it might be worthwhile thinking through the kinds of events you consider, in a sense, kind of invitation only,
Mm-hmm.
and which kinds of events you feel are robust enough or open enough, or I don't mean this in a bad way, but superficial enough
Mm-hmm.
that they can be public.
Yeah.
And as you well know, the invite-only referral word-of-mouth approach doesn't guarantee you aren't going to get a crazy person in the room.
True. A better chance of not having it.
I don't know. I think folks like us know way more crazy people than we think.
Hey, they're around, that's for sure.
I think that the authentic difference is that when people are, fields, if people are connected somehow, even by an elaborate sort of, 6 degrees of separation kind of way, but they're still connected, there's a field that holds them, as opposed to people who just showed up for something. Yeah. Then you do need the strength to create the field that they're in.
Yeah, the other thing that, I have a friend, she's in the UK, but she does some incredible marketing of her services. And she uses email, but they're really beautiful emails. And so I've asked her, what are you using? And she said, MailChimp.
Yeah.
So I think I better kind of begin to think about that.
I'm glad you have someone who's turning you around on this.
Well, and she has more technical capability than I do, but maybe it's time, because my emails, go out to a list of people, but they could turn up in spam for some people, and
technically, it's not legal. If you're, this is the other thing, is to stay on the right side of things.
Well, pretty much I've gotten permission from all of them to be on my list.
Thinking if there's still an issue around doing it out of your personal email on the legal side of things. Not sure, but yes, once you get up to certain numbers, their spam filters start to bounce things out, which those email services do. They have whatever leprechaun powers. They keep that from happening. There's a few other things that it does that are very, very useful. One, it holds all of your information in a database in one place on the cloud. When you're ready, it can split things into lists. Mm-hmm. So you can send constellation stuff to those constellation people and social issue stuff, if you start getting a little more diversified. Mm-hmm. When people unsubscribe, you can't accidentally resubscribe them, which I find extremely useful. It's a really, really, and it's automated. So they just go, you go down to the bottom, you hit unsubscribe, you're off the list. And then, we all know these people and we accidentally re-add them, and the software won't let us do that. So that's a very nice feature. and again, once you get up to certain numbers, it keeps things from bouncing. You can also tell who's reading your emails. It gives you information. Like, what's very useful to me is to know, oh, this email got opened 20% by 20% of the people, but this one got opened by 30% of the people. What was so different about the subject line that got people to open that email?
I know Constant Contact does that, but does MailChimp do that?
I'm sure it does. That's so basic. I would be shocked if they didn't.
Okay.
And then, as I mentioned, when you're ready for autoresponders, it also gives you that little bit of code that's very easy, that you can just stick into your website, and it says, would you like to get on my email list? Put in your email here.
Tell me again, what's the auto respond?
Auto respond. So let's say I go to your website and I like it and I want to be kept informed about what you're doing, and I put in my email, and then MailChimp will automatically write to me and say, welcome, thank you for joining my email list. Please enjoy the emails, the newsletters that are to come. In more complex situations, what it involves is, I'm sure you've seen on many websites, is sign up for my free gift. And the autoresponder will deliver the free gift automatically. The video or the article or the report or whatever it is.
Okay.
You can see that on my website.
Okay.
That's not urgent. Autoresponders is usually like, I think of as kind of second stage business stuff. Having an email list like MailChimp, I consider first stage. It really isn't an option. It's really something that if you expect and want your business to grow and really support you financially, it's going to be nurturing the relationships with people who have touched base with you is basically what that gives you the ability to do. And that person may sign up or come to a free event in 2016, and then he signs up for your $3,000 program in 2001. But he's been getting your newsletters and your articles, and it's as I've said before, marketing is about offering value and building relationships. And at a certain point, doing it in the way you're doing it is going to just get to be hard work. Yeah, using some of the technology that we have available to make it a little easier. You still want to make it really warm and fuzzy and really authentic. Like you say, the emails from this friend in the UK that she's like, wow, she's really using these heartless technology in a really heartfelt kind of way. She's figured out how to do that. Mm-hmm. And many people obviously make mistakes with this technology, and feel very markety or pushy or generic or whatever, but that isn't an inevitable part of the technology.
Right.
Yeah. They just don't know better.
I'm not worried about that.
No.
The other one was the first one there. I want to offer something in the next Constellation evening about systemically all that's at play after this election, and to see what suggestions you had. And then we must have talked a little bit about this last time, because you even gave me a question like, what does it mean to be an American and to heal our past?
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, I just saw it today. I hadn't remembered that. I'm looking at. See, the thing is, I take all these notes. I need to go back and look at my notes.
Yeah.
But what are the elements? I mean, I can come up with a whole bunch. And I did a practice one with Bonnie just to see.
That sounded great.
What might show up, and there's a lot more.
So obviously, the question you want to answer is, what do people really want and need, right?
Mm-hmm.
How might you get answers to that question? In addition to the constellation you did with Bonnie, which is great.
So what do people really want and need?
At the level of their conscious mind, by the way, not what we really know they want and need, but but what do they if you ask them, what would they say? And how might you get an answer to that question?
Well, they might say, I mean, I could ask some people this, but they might say they want to understand more about what's going on, and the voices or the people that they haven't seen or haven't heard, that's all coming up. Why would people vote for Trump? Why would somebody do that? So there's a whole element of the population that's been suppressed or felt fear or felt marginalized that we didn't even know about, or many didn't know about. And it's probably about understanding some of that.
Right. Well, let me rephrase the question. I'm not so much about us figuring out an answer to that question. How might you get an answer to that question?
What do people really want and need?
Yeah. What might you do to find out? And you suggested something briefly, which is asking them,
mm-hmm.
right? Mm-hmm. So are there some 2 or 3 key people who you really think have their pulse on it or represent this group of people really well, who you could ask?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I can think of one right off the bat.
There you go. And certainly, someone who came to the last one and seemed an enthusiastic participant to say, if we did another one, what would really interest you? Or even, you can use this as a promotional, in a sense, as a promotional email, but in the form of a question, right to everyone who went and say, my next one is coming up. Please let me know, if you were to come and make the time for this, what would you most want to explore? I really want to meet the needs of you and people like you.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of functions both as getting some answers to your question, and it functions as some marketing.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
Because there are about 20 ways to fashion this. The way you just mentioned, and there's probably 3 or 4 variations on that. Part of what I'm very interested in right now as a question is the sense of division, of not being able to see. Like, as a systemics, it's not so much me getting to know them better. Personally, I would like to do that. But at a system level, like, what the hell? What? Why does it vibrationally feel like the Civil War again? Obviously it isn't. No one's shooting anybody, or mostly not, but it's kind of
what I put in my email that I've already sent out inviting people was, why is America at war with itself?
Mm.
And then I followed that, because that's really really intense. I followed it with something like, and where in there might we find the seeds of potential?
Nice.
Or something
that's
different.
Lovely.
Yeah. So a lot of people really liked that.
I think that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Because people need hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't want to do a constellation, and I've learned this from others that I do these with. We can have some terrible stuff show up, the trauma and everything, and we don't want to leave it there.
Mm-hmm.
Is to kind of find in there, because that's the fertile ground, really, for what wants to be healed or happen, come forward.
Yeah. I really, that's sort of emerging future stuff, sort of aspect of things. They did a constellation It's a bit of a chaos constellation, but that was fine at in Croatia on Iska, the situation with Iska.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very end, because there's been some conflict in Iska in the past, and it's still having some effect in the present moment. And at the very end, the facilitator just brought in a representative for something new. And it was so simple.
Yeah.
And it shifted the whole thing. And there were about 30 representatives in the constellation, because it was one of those where people are invited to stand up, and they went, one person's going, I represent the founders, and I represent this, and I represent that. And the circle was just filled with people. And it wasn't bad, but it had this sort of disordered quality to it. Wasn't conflicted, but it was definitely disordered. And when that came in, it was like, oh, okay. I thought that was just brilliant, just the new thing.
And everybody was kind of taken with that?
It's just like, oh, glad you're finally here. Grand. Okay. It was just like
even though they didn't know necessarily what it was.
The field probably doesn't know what it is.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I know people too who always like to eventually put in something about something's missing.
There's that. But that could be the past. That's almost always past oriented.
Okay.
Right? It's something that didn't get included along the way. In simple terms, in a family, it's the financial betrayal that no one talks about, or the slave holding that no one talks about, or that or the whatever. It's the unincluded aspect of things. Present or past is usually what shows up.
What do you think about, in the one Bonnie and I did, we had white people. We had white people on the left and white people on the right. And right off the top of my head, I don't remember the dynamics going on there, but it was interesting because the immigrants said that even though they wanted to walk with the millennials and go forward into the future, millennials were like done with all this. They were just moving on. The immigrants said, we need them. We need all of them to help us learn how to be here, what life is here, and their traditions and what's important. So it's just interesting that way.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because how we divide the political world up is getting presupposed here.
Yeah.
So whites on the right and whites on the left. Well, that's one way to divide it up. But there are also whites with money and the whites without money. And that doesn't divide over left and right very well.
That's interesting.
There's whites with power, whites without power. I mean, there's just, a Marxist is going to divide this up very differently than a liberal in the way a liberal generally looks at it. The whites who are part of the new information economy and the whites who are still left in the old industrial economy. And that's another way to divide it up that I find, those kinds of ways of looking at it. Whites on the coasts, whites in the rural areas, city whites, rural whites. I mean, so that describes the electoral map kind of gorgeously.
I love that flyover zone. I love that depiction.
Exactly. And what history does that represent exactly? So why is like red in those places and blue in those places? There's a constellation because there's a history about why that's even so. That's a little hidden to us, I think. And then obviously we know that, even talking about whites and blacks as political categories. Those are political categories. They're not racial categories. We didn't talk about whites and blacks until, the founding fathers had to figure out how to count slaves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a way to make poor whites to at least feel better than blacks. So it's a part of this is Leslie's little thing, but I really would like if constellations could give us back our identities. I'm not white. I'm German, French, English, and about 6 other things. A black person is Igbo and, Ugandan and Scottish. That for me is one of the great gifts of constellations, when we can do that for people. But we can't throw away white and black, because the terms white and black have determined people's destinies for the last 400 years in this country. So, I can't just turn to a black person and say, I'm not white. I mean, that's just really, talk about privilege. But at some level, we're not, You're a little bit darker than I am. I mean, or at least in this light. I don't know if it would show up. Right now, you look a little darker in your light. Right now I look lily white. I'm not usually quite so lily white looking.
Time of year.
Yeah. In England, they call Pakistanis blacks. In the US, we would never call a Pakistani black. So it's, anyway, so it's, and that comes into our, constellations. We have to think about our definitions and what we're already presupposing when we use these definitions. What's an absolute identification? Like something like, generally speaking, someone's gender is, or, born in America. That's kind of absolute and undeniable. And what's actually a political definition? What's a category that we were putting people into? It's interesting. Mm-hmm. And it's where, that itself is an interest. We could do constellations on political categories. Wouldn't that be fun? Mm-hmm. Marxist categories, alt-right categories, liberal categories, the different ways these political schemes organize people. It'd be very interesting. Is this helpful? I'm nattering a little bit right now.
No, it's okay, because it's giving me a lot of things to think about, which I really need to do.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
Good. Yeah. And I do think that's why constellations has a bias in favor of authentic ethnic identities.
The bias is, though, not
words in favor of them.
Oh, okay.
Irish, Polish, Serbian, Nigerian. Because it's noticed that the connection to the land of the ancestors' history has an intense effect and resonance. And when we return to it, when we get reconnected to it, something seems to feel better. And that it's partly the American disease that we have all these identities disconnected from, ancestral lands.
Well, that was a turning point in this constellation, or one of them, a big one in the constellation I did on November 11th. Somebody in the circle came in. She said, I feel like, and he had called himself the white man. He needs to have support of his ancestral land or something like that. And I had her stand behind him, and he just transformed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even started to lean back into her.
Yeah.
So the land is coming through more and more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. One, there's, rural people tend to have a stronger identification with the land because usually they're people who've been there longer. Mm-hmm. Us urban folk have usually, occasionally I meet a San Franciscan who can say they're, fourth or fifth generation San Franciscan, and that's pretty cool. But urban people tend to have moved within a generation. So I think that's maybe one of the things going into the red and the blue. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But also, I tried to get this conversation going on family and systemic constellations, but it was tricky and it didn't quite take off. But I listened to these alt-right people. There was a very fascinating interview with Richard Spencer on NPR. Fascinating. And he's trying to redefine white. I mean, it's horrible what he's doing, but there's something really interesting underneath it. To redefine white supremacy as a recovery of European American identity. And then, of course, he goes into European Americans have done everything and nobody else has done anything. But when I heard that, I went, that's a place I can connect with him. Because I do think there's a way in which, Mexican Americans or South Indian Americans or, African Americans, even though that's already at a continental size, in the name of themselves, connect with some ethnicity, some land. And what I identified with is that, I've gotten my DNA. I'm probably 20 different European countries. Mm-hmm. I am just like Richard Spencer when it comes to my blood. And recovering that sense of Europeanness is really hard for folks like us because we are such friggin' mutts. Do I identify with Germany or England or France or, what? And so the sense of disconnection from roots and from lineage, I've done all my work on my genealogy. I know a lot about it, but I still can't feel it, is what I tell people. I've done constellations and I still can't feel it. And I think there's something in there. Mm-hmm. Is that the so-called whites, the so-called, the European Americans, to a great degree, with grand exceptions, the Irish are often big exceptions to this and stuff like that, but are such mutts that the disconnection from that is profound. So anyway, I throw that out as well. It's something I've been chewing on, because when he talked about it, I stepped into and felt a longing I share. Mm-hmm. And it's really super distorted and filled with a lot of resentment. All that stuff. Yeah. The appropriation of the identity of the victim. Very unhelpful. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm nattering, but it's something I've been thinking about lately, that whole European American thing. It's interesting. Yeah. I don't know, do you know how much of a mutt you are?
I'm 46% Irish.
Yeah, see, the Irish are often different in this regard.
And then the rest is somewhere in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that it was from my name is Scottish, so it was really Scottish Irish, but there was a group that the Scots came over to Ireland, and at some point what they called the Scotch Irish came to the United States. Okay. Yeah. But still, there's over 50% that's a bunch of stuff.
Right.
That I don't really know what it is.
Did you look at a DNA test? Is that what you're reporting from? Yeah, sometimes it's a little vague. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're a bit past the time, and we've been nattering, which is fine because I enjoy this sort of conversation. Is there something specific, businessy or anything or related to this that you would like to make sure we address or connect with?
Not that I can think of right now.
Okay.
It's been a lot. It's been really good.
I really like where you're going with this America at war with itself thing. I think it's a keen insight that actually there's like metaphorical or sublimated war going on. Who knows? Maybe it is connected to the Civil War. It's what didn't get finished with the Civil War.
Yeah.
And not only that one, other wars. You just need to keep testing and see if that's the language that resonates with others. And if it does, then you're golden. You keep going with it. Right.
Some yes, and one guy thought it was a little too strong.
War is a strong word.
Yeah. So I acknowledged that for him, and yeah.
That's always, I'll just name that's always a really challenging marketing question. Because if you're not strong and provocative, you don't get seen. You're just generic. You sound like everybody else. But if you're too generic, only 3 people are going to resonate with it, right? It goes too far, right?
He's coming.
Finding the sweet spot is it's part of the work. And I'm glad you're not going too generic, because that's usually most people's. It's like to appeal to everybody.
Yeah.
And then it just ends up sounding like everybody. Tad Hargrave has several wonderful articles on this topic. His most famous one was on I can't remember the title, but it included the word rant. He recommended that you go on a good rant. As obviously it has to be heartfelt. It can't be just, making it up. But, like he rants all the time, sometimes to not great effect. He goes too far. But he'll do things like one of his great rants of all time that I think is an amazing article is why stop playing small is bullshit. And he used the word bullshit in the title. And it's a brilliant article, and it's a perfectly correct rant about a certain thing going on in the business world that was probably shared more than any other article he's ever written, because it really struck a nerve. It really was in some resonance with something with people are feeling and thinking. So I invite you to keep playing with that tension. I tend to go a little bit. I go in the softening side. It's just I get nervous.
Me too. Yeah.
It's natural.
But that was just coming through, and I just did it.
Yeah. And as you say, he's still coming. So there you go. Win-win.
He signed up immediately.
You got his attention.
Well, he was there last time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you have any follow-ups up, it does sound like sometime soon you're going to have
website,
some kind of website thing to share with me.
Yeah.
So,
I need to just do a little more revision, and that, it's hard to fit it in with all this other stuff going on. So that's part of what it's been. But yeah, it's actually up and live. I just thought but nobody knows about it.
Is it still your name?
It's judykwallace.com.
Can I look? Would that be okay with you if I looked?
You can look, but
no comments yet. Okay.
The writing still really needs to be worked with. Okay. And I think I put in this report some of the things that didn't get done.
Right.
I still want to have done. So.
Is it all right if I share with you the things I see and like?
Sure.
Okay, good. then I'll do that. Because
Well,
I'm feeling a little unused between sessions. And I'm
okay.
trusting that you're getting your needs met.
Yeah.
But feel free to, like, again, if you want to, like that email that you just mentioned, if you ever were writing an email and you wanted my eye on it before you sent it out, that's
I don't think of that at all. So
yeah. Feel free, and it can even be after the fact. Leslie already sent it out, but I'd still like your opinion on it. Or feel free to do that. And if you decide to start to tackle MailChimp, let me know. Maybe that's something that we can. I mean, I'm not a MailChimp expert, but we could do screen share and help you out a little bit.
Do that next time. How many more sessions do I have?
Let me send you a follow-up email and let you know. I have to look that up on a spreadsheet.
Okay. It should be getting close to the end. I just don't know. I haven't kept track.
I have been. So I just need to look up that spreadsheet so that my brain doesn't need to hold things like that.
Yes.
Okay, Judy. Well, again, congratulations. I think you're doing marvelously. And I will send a follow-up email.
Okay. Thank you, Leslie.
Talk to you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.